good idea, and it will help somebody in New Albany and put somebody to work, we are all better off if somebody else in Indiana went to work too, if it's a wise investment program. So it matters where you live, but I think we've got to look beyond that too. And I'm not saying you're being parochial, but just we have got to get this region going. Yes, sir.
Matt Sabota, resident of the area, commutes into Chicago every day. Two questions, one of which is rather just curiosity, and second, just a point of understanding. First, I assume if it's existing rail lines that this is not going to be an electric line, it'll be diesel.
It will be electric to 45th Avenue. It will be diesel from 45th to Lowell, and it'll be diesel from 45th to Valparaiso. But to get into Chicago, it has to be electric.
Yes. Second question is, if everything passes downstate and the sales tax funding is approved and everything works reasonably well, what's the timeline for, and do the federal funds, is there a clock ticking? Do they run out at some point if for some reason things don't work downstate this time? What's the rough timeline?
The timeline is about 4 years. And you phrased your question perfectly. If everything about runs right, because it isn't. But let me tell you, I'm tired of waiting, and not just on the South Shore, but we are committed to pushing this. This is something that's going to happen someday. We're never going to see it. The theory, not the theory, under Representative Dovis's legislation, the actual tax collection would not begin until July of 2009. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, there is no immediate need for that money tomorrow morning. And secondly, is revenues that the state was counting on an annualized basis, and it amounts to about $30 million. We want to make sure they have, in fairness to the General Assembly and the governor, an entire budget cycle and another meeting of the General Assembly to compensate for that. But the time frame is essentially 4 years from that date, so essentially 5 years from now. The 4 years as far as the federal process essentially breaks down as such. First of all, you would, once you know you have a permanent non-federal source, it's about 15 to 18 months as far as preliminary engineering. Thereafter, you would have a federal review, and that is about 3 months. And that would be something we'd be careful of looking at, because sometimes you send things to Washington for review, and 3 years later you get a phone call back. Then you would have the final engineering, which would take about another year. And the theory is, at that point, construction could begin about a quarter after that, about 3 months after that. And again, that's optimistic, so you ought to build, not optimistic, I think reasonably plausible, but you have to build it in a couple of months. So you're not talking indefinitely. You're not talking indefinitely. And the other thing I would say, and ma'am, I'll take your question next. In the old days, as I like to say, and it wasn't all that long ago, communities that wanted to build mass transit systems would do all of these things, eventually get approval from the federal government, and then the federal government would say, okay, where's your money? Oh, yeah. And then you start all over again. This is essentially, listen, you have to prove to us you have the money. And then, obviously, you have to make your cost-benefit work. And then, so part of the key of federal approval is letting them know we're serious. We're serious.